Hi folks, and welcome back to another Philosophy Club. Okay, so this week we're back to the philosophy of science with the idea of scientific revolutions. I thought this would be a good video to do given that November is a month of science. But it's also just not revolutions as in guns and pikes and pitchforks, but revolutions as in scientists out-sciencing each other. Okay, so first I want you to think about the idea that the Earth is the center of the universe and all the stars and planets and moons all orbit the Earth as described by Ptolemy in the 2nd century AD. Okay, we've done that? Okay, now imagine this idea being replaced after 1500 years by the idea that the Earth orbits the Sun. Think about the massive changes that would have taken place in science at the time, how people's worldviews changed from them being the center of the universe to being a small speck in an infinitely large space. Well, it was these revolutionary changes that interested philosopher of science and physicist Thomas Kuhn. Sort of like raccoon, so sorry. Kuhn studied the history of science, and as he did so, he saw that science went through cycles or phases as it evolved. So we're going to look at some of those phases. Firstly, he said that science works in something called a paradigm. What's a paradigm? A paradigm is a set of rules, facts, practices, methods, definitions, assumptions, codes that form the basis of knowledge. Basically, a paradigm is just a broader set of rules that define how science works at any one time, similar to the idea of a discipline or a practice. Paradigms are helpful as they allow scientists to generally agree on these sets of rules, which makes the actual work of doing science a lot easier because they don't have to constantly defend every decision that they make. So if you take our example of the model of the solar system and the universe, scientists agreed that the Earth was the center of the universe up until about the year 1500 AD, and then everything was fine and cool. And the period of time where scientists were fine and cool, Kuhn calls normal science. But it doesn't last forever. As scientists learn more and more about the world, they realize that the paradigm that they're working in can't solve certain problems, and it can't solve every problem. Again, in our example, the model of the universe where the Earth is the center, scientists couldn't explain the retrograde motions of the planets in the night sky, particularly the planets of Mercury and Venus. So it's at this point that the paradigm moves into a problematic period or phase which Kuhn calls crisis, where the science basically just stops working and stops being as useful as it was. And then usually it takes a big breakthrough, a big eureka moment, a revolutionary moment in the development of science that causes a, drumroll, a paradigm shift. And what's a paradigm shift? Well, a paradigm shift is usually a discovery or a theory that solves the problem of the last paradigm and brings about a new paradigm. Paradigm shifts, Kuhn argues, have happened throughout the history of science. And for our example, it was the work of Nicholas Copernicus and Galileo that brought about a paradigm shift in astronomy, shifting the way science saw the Earth's place in the cosmos. So now that we've looked at Hume's phases in the evolution of science, let's look at Kuhn's legacy. Kuhn's idea of a paradigm shift was highly influential. As it stands today, Kuhn's work is the most referenced work in all of the arts and humanities, but it's also not without its controversies. These controversies come from how we think about science progresses over time. Is there, for example, a big radical break to a new paradigm like Kuhn argued, or does science build gradually over time, constantly progressing towards better and better science and making more and more progress as time goes on? For example, the latter view was shared by philosopher of science Karl Popper, who we've covered a few times in earlier videos. Furthermore, the term paradigm shift was so popular that it started to be used outside of science to describe basically any change or breakthrough, to the point where now it's lost much of its original meaning. So, what did you think of Kuhn's idea of the paradigm shift, and what do you think about the idea that science progresses slowly over time, or do you think that science progresses in big radical breakthroughs? Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. I'll be back again next week with something else. In the meantime,